So the first facet of sexual selection is male-male competition. So male-male competition talks about competition. So male-male competition usually happens in such scenario where there are few females or multiple males. Okay. In this situation, where we are talking about sex ratios, male-male competition is pretty prominent. So male-male competition is influenced by sex ratio. If females are less, males are more, then male-male competition will be higher. Okay. Moving forward, resource value. Now the resource value talks about what is the patch or the benefits associated with the female. Now usually whenever a female is associated or selected, it gives a particular resource value as well. Okay, let's say a particular area is there. Okay, there are two particular areas and there are multiple females there. So there's a female 1, there is a female 2. Okay, and the female 1 is acquired, or the female 1 has acquired this particular resource patch. Female 2 has acquired this particular resource patch. Now the thing is, when a male is selecting a particular female, there will be competition for selection of a, so there will be competition between males to get the best female. Okay, so this is happening where there is equal number of sex ratios as well. So it depends on which particular sex ratio is there and what is the resource value associated with the females. Now one other aspect of resource value is how much of brood the female is producing. Okay, so many females produce less number of brood, many females produce better number of brood. So a male always also checks for the better things that it is getting from the female. So not only male is getting selected, but also female resources as getting selected. So there is an exchange of selection. Okay. And for that, different males have to compete. Okay, because a particular good female will be selected with multiple mates as well. Yeah, so there is always this kind of interaction. Then there is social ranking. As we know, in a group dynamic situation where there are multiple individuals in the society, there are rankings. One is alpha, beta, and so on. One is the head, and there are multiple individuals in that. Some might be patriarchal, some might be matriarchal. Now it depends in which ranking are they. So usually the competition happens with the organisms of the same or the upper level. So usually the competition happens with the male of the same or the level upper. Okay, so whenever male is trying to reach for upper level or promote themselves, then they compete with the males of a, let's say beta is trying to compete with the alpha. Okay, or when two alphas meet, so they compete with each other. So it depends on social ranking as well. It's very rare when you see a particular alpha is getting threatened by a particular delta. Okay, very lower level will not be that much of threatened, but it is usually transaction or interaction that happens within intermediate levels or immediate levels. Yeah, so it depends on social ranking. Which social ranking is it? Same goes for female. If there are multiple dominant females that are in the top tier, then there will be more competition to acquire them. If there is a matriarchal system, then the females which are leading the pack will be more tried to mate with. Okay, so the alphas of a particular group of there are males of multiple groups will try to mate with that particular queen, or let's say leader of that particular pack. Yeah, alpha female. Same goes for cases of, let's say, elephant. Elephant have a matriarchal system, and the leader is usually adult, okay, older, and they decide or they promote who is to be mated with and who is to be not. Okay. Now then there is winner-loser effect. Now winner-loser effect talks about the cost and benefit ratio system. Okay, so it depends on what is the cost associated with acquiring that female. Let's say there are two particular individuals. There is a one male, there is a male 2. They are trying to acquire a particular female. So when they're fighting, there is a cost associated with them. Okay, the fighting, and usually it ends up in death or sometimes a very bad scar which results in infection. So there are multiple situations and there is a lot of cost associated with the getting the female. The thing is, what are the benefits that they're getting from that female? So what will the winner get and what will the loser lose? So it depends. So it will tell that the competition should be there or not. I mean, if two particular males are competing, the female should be worthwhile as well. If the female has that much of resources, then the male can compete for that, and that the competition can be harsh. But if the female is not worthwhile for competing, there is no point of competing between them. Yeah. So whenever we're talking about selection, by only female, there is also aspects of male selection. Only the females can decide it, but sometimes males also have to struggle through the selection of particular females. And that kind of interaction results in male-male competition. Now moving on to the most aspected or detailed study of sex selection part, where it is female choice. Now it is more interesting and it is more studied in the sense it deals with visual and ornate morphological characters. It is usually influenced by visual and ornate morphological characters. You know about peacock's tail, boarbird's nest, and different characters that shows how visually classified and produced signals are more promoted, because they show that they have better adaptation, fitness, immunity, good genes and all. So usually female choice is influenced by visual and ornate morphological characters, and that is prominent in sexually dimorphic organisms. Now when organisms are not dimorphic, or also there are many organisms which are dimorphic, they also are associated with complex calls and few complex behaviors. Now in songbirds, it is pretty prominent that a bird during its mating season produces complex calls. Now the complex call is the determinants of sexual selection. So as we have a particular language system, now we talk in a different sense. Sometimes that boys and girls, they talk differently in their home, but when they're trying to talk with their boyfriends or girlfriends or their particular partners, they modify their kind of sense and talk more. Either they use more vocabulary, they use better words, or they use that sort of sense that it appears better looking, more complicated, and more pleasing to sound. Yeah, so that sort of things birds do as well. They also make different words. They try to put in more and more efforts to be loud, to be clear, and to be more sound in the sense of making the female impressed. Yeah, so that is also associated by different form of dances, different form of fan movements, different form of showing of feathers, and that is very complex as well. Now this is also seen in crickets as well as frogs. All the organisms which use vocal encounters as particular characters for sexual selection, they use complex modified calls associated with different behaviors. So there are few birds and few organisms which bring out nuptial gifts. Nuptial gifts are those kind of gifts which are given to be associated with the mating. Okay, and this is very prominent in bees and in different kind of birds, penguins, okay, as well as in humans. Okay, so because visual or ornate characters associated with nuptial gifts and offerings in particular humans as well. So it is evolutionary to give out gifts. Okay, and girls, you can demand because that's evolution says. Then visual displays and dance, and it is pretty interesting to see that there are multiple characters or multiple organisms which acquire this character to show off. Okay, so they need to show and impress or woo the female by showing different patternal movements or periodic movements that we call as dance. So movement of these particular characters, these particular dances, these particular patterns have been evolutionary inherited by different organisms. It is pretty prominent in case of vertebrates, especially in case of birds, in case of few reptiles, and in case of mammals, but it's pretty prominent in birds. So if you want to know more about it, you can go through a Netflix series, Netflix's documentary talks about dancing with the birds. Then there is ornate nesting and site selection. So few birds, what they do is they produce and prepare the nest in such a manner that it will be more appeasing and it looks good and will be presentable for the female, and is pretty prominent in baya weavers or any kind of weaver bird, tailor birds, and also a few organisms like bower birds, where they produce bowers and nest, and some of them produces nest in such a manner that they line it with flowers, with beautiful objects, sometimes shiny objects, to make it more appeasing, more pleasing to that of the female, so that they come and lay eggs. So these are also few characters which female has to choose. So female can go for either visual characters, auditory characters, or complex calls, nuptial gifts, and visual displays and dance, patternal movements like movement of the tail, number of the tails, and so that. Okay, and then there is on-ret, nesting, and site selection. So the difference between visual morphological characters and visual display and dance is, now visual morphological characters are fixed characters, which is like few spots on that particular back, few colorful neck systems and all that. But in case of visual displays and dances, those are particular feathers, these are particular patterns that are usually showed in mating time. They're prominently shown in a pattern associated with a movement. Okay, and then closed down. Yeah. So these are characters which influences female choice to select a particular mate. So where we observe two particular aspect of it, what is male choice or male and male competition. Okay, different factor or determinants of sexual selection from the aspect of male and male competition. Then there is female choice.